Hello, divine creations, divine marvels, children of God. Thank you so much for dropping by. Here it is, one more day of life. One more day of life. I used to take life for granted, and in some moments I still do. However, thanks to the authentic teachings of Christ, what I've realized is that life is a gift. Life in these bodies on this unspeakably beautiful earth is an absolute gift. Now, for anyone who's new to this channel, what I'm going to be talking about is the way of life, the path, how to live that Christ taught. And this was very clearly shared and communicated by one of, if not the greatest Christians of all time, Bruno Gröning, who was active in Germany after World War II, and around this simple, humble man who said that what he taught was just the teachings of Jesus Christ. The unfathomable happened. Deaf people regained their hearing. Blind people regained their vision. Paralyzed people stood up out of their wheelchairs and walked. So what I'm going to be sharing today is, in essence, what he taught. And what he taught was how to live the path, the way of life that Christ called not just the people of the time that he was around, but called the entire human race to live. And that may sound a little odd that one person would be calling the whole human race to a particular way of life. But Christ didn't call us all to a particular custom. He didn't call us to a particular religion. He called us to a way of being. And what is that way of being? Being in communion, connection with the divine, and being guided by it. Giving all of our life, our heart, our soul, our being, our body, dedicating all of it to this, to love itself, to being of service, to trusting, to completely entrusting ourselves to this this thing that Christ called Abba, which is a Aramaic word which literally means daddy. So Christ had this loving relationship with this thing called God. And I even hesitate to use the word God because so many meanings have been added on top of it. But fundamentally, what Christ spoke of was something that was completely trustworthy, that we could utterly rely on and depend on. And that was available to help us in all situations. Who was something that was so good, something that was so trustworthy, that just as a little child feels affection for and reaches out to their human parent and says, "Daddy," either "Daddy, I love you," or "Daddy, I need some help." That the fundamental reality, that which made us. It's interesting that the Hebrew word for God, Yehovah, means that which caused to exist, meaning the source that created everything. That source is so good and so loving and so trustworthy that Christ called it Abba and called all of us to have that same child to parent relationship, and spoke of it as our Father. So one of the things that Bruno Gröning clarified about Christ's teaching is how to take in, everyone of pretty much any religious or spiritual denomination understands that this higher power is available to help. And Bruno Grüning clarified exactly how to receive that help. And for some people, that's even a bit of a radical idea. Some people have an idea of God that's like far and away and just is kind of uninvolved in our day-to-day life. But Christ really pointed out that this Father, this um, that which made us, which gave us life, is very intimately involved in our life and very available to help. But how to take that help in? Well, Bruno Grüning taught a very simple practice for receiving that divine help. It's very simple. Please sit with your legs uncrossed, feet flat on the floor, hands on your legs, palms facing upwards. Back in an upright position, not stiff, but not slouched over either. And then please close your eyes. And now hand over every burden, every worry, every situation about which you feel stress or concern. And also separate yourself from any illness. For example, let's say you have a cold. Literally give the cold away to God or to a spiritual helper you trust and separate yourself from the idea, oh, I have a cold. And then begin to focus your entire attention on your healing. Meaning, that means many things. One thing it means to me is to really trust that healing is happening and it's on its way. And then ask to receive the divine healing power and observe your body, noticing what you feel. Really taking this energy in, trusting that every sensation now is a step towards your recovery. You feel. Taking in the good, having the intention to drink in, absorb, So I'm going to talk and read a little bit, and I invite you to just continue taking in the healing life energy. So, what an idea that in every aspect of our lives, the divine is intimately involved and available to help. This idea to me is what I'm about to share is one of, if not the most important spiritual ideas I've ever heard. And Bruno Grüning put it like this: whoever trusts in God's right hand has not built on sinking sand. The state of the world is steered by God. Only things that serve as a lesson are allowed to happen. So, why is this so important? Because that means that everything that happens is part of the divine plan. This is so important because so many people lose faith. And I can speak from personal experience. I've certainly had my faith challenged, and there was a long period where I lost my faith, or my faith was severely weakened because when negative things happen, we don't have an accurate and proper understanding of what's going on. When negative things happen, most people are in the habit, and I am in the process of breaking that habit, of thinking that, oh, God's not fair, or life isn't fair, or this shouldn't be happening. We get resentful and we lose faith, and hence through losing faith, we lose connection to God, and then things just get worse. Isn't that why most people aren't able to have belief and faith and trust in a higher power? Because of bad things happening that seem on the surface unfair. And yet Bruno Gröning was quite adamant that such things were nothing more than a lesson, or he said a reparation. And I need to look up the German word so I can convey the meaning more accurately. He said, you reap what you sow, just as Christ did, and that all the negativity that we experience, we've brought it on ourselves through past misdeeds. This is, a spiritual idea that you hear in different versions over and over, but to really take it to heart, that everything bad that happens to us happens not only for a reason, but that not only is it part of a divine plan, but it's something we've actually brought onto ourselves. That doesn't mean that God is in any way punishing us. It's just allowing us to experience the consequence of our actions. This is a revolutionary idea because what it means is that life is fair. Normally, when bad things happen, people lose their faith because they think, oh, this isn't fair. Oh, this shouldn't be happening. Oh, God's not in charge. So let's forget the last one. God's not in charge, but such things as life isn't fair or this shouldn't be happening. Those are a denial of God, or a denial of God's omnipotence, or omnibenevolence, which is a big word to say all goodness. It's a denial of that God is just. So we need to be mindful of that. And, it's not so much, the way I was raised, to have such thoughts would be a sin that would lead me to eternal damnation. That's not what Bruno Grüning taught at all. But such thoughts do disconnect us from the divine. So let's say something bad happens to me. I I go to get my car fixed, and it ends up they scam me and they overcharge me. And then I later find this out. Well, from the worldly point of view, it's like, oh, this is awful. This shouldn't have happened. How dare they? Da 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 da. All those such thoughts on the surface, they seem to be about the mechanics who, in this example, ripped me off, did me wrong. But underneath it is a complete denial of God, a complete denial that God's in charge, a complete denial that things are as they, that there's an underlying order and direction to things. So that's part of why, Bruno Gröning said you must master our thoughts, because evil sends evil thoughts, which then disconnect us from God. So then what happens in this example? I have all these thoughts, I say yes to them, and then I get really stirred up and upset. So then I start to experience stress in my body. So by taking in these negative thoughts, then I start to take in negative feelings, and then I start to literally harm my body, all because I took in untrue thoughts that are based on a lack of faith. What might be and so from this perspective, how to respond to such a, if that thing happened, I take in my car and they scam me and I find out, how to respond from a spiritual point of view. Well, first and foremost, so I'm just putting myself in that, like, oh, wow, I don't like that. Okay, I don't like being treated that way. So it's not about cutting us off from our natural sense of what's right and wrong, but notice I haven't jumped into judgment. And oh, wow, that person did me wrong. They obviously have taken on some evil, and now the evil is working through them. So instead of judging them, I have a spiritual understanding of what's happening. It's not that they're bad people. It's they're kind of, you could say, spiritually sick. They've taken on evil, and now, as Bruno Gröning pointed out, what you take in, it must come back out. So it's like, okay, they've taken in some evil, and so then they're acting it out. And then the final piece, what's the lesson here? What's my part? What did I do in the past? I may not, with the lesson, there's always something that can be learned in every situation. And so it may not come to my awareness of what I did, but to stand in the recognition that if someone's doing me harm, I did harm to someone else at some point in the past. And I may not have a clear understanding. So it may just come down to, wow, God, I don't like this. And you're in charge, not me. I trust that something good is going on here. I trust that some way, somehow, I did something wrong in the past, and this is a consequence of it. So this worldview that God's in charge and completely trustworthy and that God is just is life-changing. And I personally struggle to apply it every day. And in the moments that I succeed, there's so much peace and so much freedom. So let's reflect on that as we continue to take in this healing life energy. Reflecting on this whole different worldview that God's in charge and that things are as they should be. I don't know if that's quite the way to say it, but as Bruno Gröning said it, the state of the world is steered by God. Noticing what you feel, every sensation, your body healing, being healed by this divine force. This is so important because we can't trust. It's like we can't trust that which we don't trust. That if we don't really trust that God is good, it's going to be hard to really trust. If we don't trust that God is all good and all powerful and all just, it's going to kind of be difficult to fully trust. And even more so with God, because if we don't believe God is all good, then there's almost certainly going to be this underlying terror of God. Hmm. So I'm going to begin wrapping things up. Actually, there's one more thing that wants to be said. So I've often reflected on how how do what's the difference between the teachings of Bruno Gröning and, let's say, a religion? And please, those who know me know I have deep respect for all the different religions of the world, and I visit different churches and temples. And here's my understanding of the difference. Bruno Gröning wants each one of us to have a direct connection with God so that we don't need Bruno Gröning, so that we don't need community hours and gatherings, so we don't need an organization or a church or a temple, so that we can participate in all those things if we feel so called to. But what Bruno Gröning came to show us all how to do was to have a direct connection to God. So as we're learning that and finding that, Bruno Gröning offers himself as a helper. You know, he used different metaphors, such as a long distance operator. Once upon a time, if you wanted to make a long distance call, you couldn't just pick up the phone and dial it. You had to call the operator, and the operator would connect you. And that's how Bruno Gröning spoke of himself. He also spoke of that this divine energy, most people are not able to absorb it directly. So he spoke of himself as a transforming station, as he was able to take in the divine energy directly, and then he would make it more readily available for other people. And he also said that he wanted people to get to the place where they could stand on their own 2 feet and absorb the energy directly. So for me, that's what right now I lean on Bruno Gröning. It's like I'm seeking his help until I'm able to have the direct connection on my own, and until the point where I can say, I'm stronger than evil. When without any other human aid, I can just have the direct connection with God and overcome evil in all its forms. Not there yet. And to some extent, and I also lean on these meetings a little bit. These meetings really are, you know, while I am giving them, it's very, very supportive of me. And so, in essence, I'm leaning on Bruno Gröning, and I'm leaning on this group a little bit. And to the best of my ability, I keep in mind the goal of to be 100% leaning on God. It's a process, and I accept. Some days I do, some days I don't, but I try and accept where I am in where I am in that process, and keep my eye on the goal to be completely God reliant. So there's a beautiful proverb out of the Middle East: trust in God and tie up your camel, meaning the ultimate goal. I think it's actually trust in Allah. It's an Islamic proverb, meaning the whole path is about trusting in the divine and have your street smarts about you. Meaning, if you're out for a ride on your camel, and you get off and you're going to go for a walk, sure, you can just say, oh, and, in the Middle East, oh, Allah, or oh, God, please take care of my camel. You could do that, or you could just tie up your camel so it doesn't wander away. So for me, it's about finding this balance between completely relying on the divine and being street smart, understanding where I am in the process of learning how to rely just on God. So let's take a little time and reflect on that. And that's mostly, in essence, I presented some quotes of Bruno Gruning's and shared a little bit of my essence, my understanding of, Bruno Gruning said, you have been displaced from the place where God puts you. Now that you have become obedient to God, you are slowly being moved back to the place from which you were displaced. That's part of how I understand what he just said. And he also said, I am helping you, and my help leads to your salvation. So, and the short version is until I don't, I need Bruno Gruning and I need other people. And the goal is for me anyway, and I believe what Bruno taught and what Christ taught, is to be completely reliant on God. So let's spend a little time and reflect on all this. I'd like to thank everyone for joining in and everyone for watching. Hi, Forever Loving Everything. Hi, Gerald. Hello, Magdalena. Thanks for saying hi, Jisoo. All right, dear ones, let's take one step deeper into the path of relying on God, relying on infinite love, power, wisdom. And let's be humble. Let's be humble and ask. I primarily ask. No, I ask both Bruno and Jesus for help in this path. So let's be humble and ask. Asking for help until we get to the place where we no longer need to ask a human. And then we can just directly ask God. Thanks so much for joining in. Take care. Much love.